Lamin Sise, Grts News.
The Gambian ambassador to the Kingdom of Morocco has attributed the massive reduction in the number of migrants crossing the high seas and the Sahara Desert in search of greener pasture to a number of factors. Ambassador Usman Baji identified a draft of stringent security measures being employed by Spanish and Moroccan agents as one factor behind the drop. The Gambian diplomat, who was speaking to GRT's Babkar Senghor in Tanja, also said the economic squeeze affecting most European countries is another factor driving youths to stay home.
His diplomatic sojourn in North Africa, former Gambian Interior Minister Usman Baji says he is now quietly settled into his new environment in the Kingdom of Morocco. He is stationed in Rabat, but also keeps an eye on neighboring countries in the region. It was when the Gambia under-23 team played in Tanja against the host, Ambassador Baji took the long drive from the Moroccan capital to the outpost town to see the team. Morocco and the Gambia have built a solid bilateral relationship that has now spanned across many spectrum. Trade and commerce form an integral part of that bond. When I sat down with Ambassador Baji at the Grand Andalusia Hotel in Tanja, our discussion centered on a host of issues, including his maiden crack at the diplomatic field. Here he explains how his first engagements were to become a familiar phenomenon in the region and elsewhere.
When I first came here in 2007, we were having a lot of Gambians, joining other sub-Saharan Africans also in their crusade for this illegal migration.
Morocco is one of the frontline states battling the mass migration of youths via the Sahara Desert and the high seas to Europe. Despite having to cope with the rigors of settling in a new environment, Ambassador Baji says he was faced with the disturbing news of the apprehending of scores of his countrymen in Dakhla, an unwelcoming news for a new man in an unfamiliar environment.
The first week I arrived, we recorded through the Ministry of Interior here 60 Gambians at the border. But because I was just arriving, so I could not go to see for myself, I sent my first secretary to go there, and register all those Gambians, interview them to ascertain their citizenship before taking any action. Then 1 or 2 months later, we received another telephone call from the Ministry of Interior that they got some Gambians in the same area, Dakhla, at the southern province, they are in about 100 of them, and the numbers were increasing, and this rings a bell. And I said, look, now this time around I've started settling, let me just go and see for myself.
That news will be the springboard for an active diplomatic life for the former Gambian Interior Minister. This notwithstanding, the flow of migrants into Spain, Ambassador Baji explains, has now diminished drastically, due largely to what he referred to as a combination of factors.
Now, since then, we've not been registering many Gambians. At least the rate has now diminished drastically, because we always tell them, you are wasting your time and your money. The Moroccan security, in collaboration with the Spanish security, have tightened all the borders. There is no way you can go. One other factor which I think discouraged most of our own fellow Gambians from now using the route to the back gate to Europe is also the financial crisis, the economic crisis that Europe is going through. Because some of those Gambians in Europe used to sponsor them, send them money, but they are finding it difficult themselves. As a result, that support was not forthcoming.
Despite the Gambia enduring a 3-0 thumping at the hands of the host, the Gambian top emissary says it is an important visit by the team, something he says explains the good times enjoyed by the two countries. For GRT's News, this is Babkar Senghor.
Child Fund and the Global Fund recently scaled up efforts at reducing the incidence of tuberculosis with a series of open field days. The field days encourage grassroots participation in the effort against the disease through information sharing. We have more in this report by Ndekumba Demba.
Tuberculosis is one of the world's deadliest diseases. According to statistics from the World Health Organization, 1/3 of the human population is currently infected with tuberculosis. As in 2010, nearly 9 million people around the world were diagnosed with the disease. 200 years ago, tuberculosis was a feared killer disease. A century on, patients were placed in sanitarium to prevent transmission. With the birth of antibiotics, tuberculosis was controlled and for a time all but eliminated. Maintaining the trend, Child Fund annually conducts an open field day for social mobilization on TB across the country. According to officials, equipping locals with the basic knowledge of tuberculosis is key in the fight to eradicate this deadly but curable disease. This open field day saw community members of Kunkujang Mariama taking through a session of very educative lecture from what is TB, signs and symptoms, method of testing, mode of transmission to prevention and treatment.
Child Fund, for the past 4 years, we have been embarking on sensitization on the issue of TB. Our motive of sensitization in the communities is to make sure that we reduce the prevalence of TB in the community. We are trying to eradicate TB in the Gambia. There are a lot of facilities that are actually available in providing TB testing and TB treatment. So we go into the communities to create awareness so that people become aware of these facilities that are available, the opportunities that are available right now in the treatment of tuberculosis.
Keba Sisi and Kumba Savale took the crowd through a very educative, interesting and interactive session on the topic. At the end of the meeting was a question and answer session. To spice the interest of the crowd, prizes were awarded to those able to answer questions or give it a try. According to participants, it was a wonderful and fruitful day. The Open Field Day is an opportunity to share information with locals on issues related to the spread of TB, as well as its control and treatment method, in a bid to mitigate an increase of the disease. For GRTS News, I am Deiko Madem.
You can also follow that story and other GRTS programs live on our website at www.grts.gm. There you can also monitor GRTS Radio Live. From there we take our first break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. While U.S. President Barack Obama pressed for a Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement at the Economic Conference of Asian Pacific Nations in Hawaii, a high-profile Republican presidential candidate blasted U.S. aid to China. Mitt Romney argued that with a $189.3 billion trade deficit with China, the United States should cut foreign assistance to Beijing and ask the emerging power to give more instead. CNN's Jill Doherty reports.
Is hopping mad.
This galls me. We give $10 million in foreign aid a year to China.
It's not that he doesn't like the Chinese.
It's not that they're bad people, but the idea that a nation that is as large and robust and economically viable as theirs is getting money from us just makes no sense at all. I would stop sending foreign aid to countries that can take care of themselves.
Is Romney right? The U.S., with a $189.3 billion trade deficit with China, is giving foreign aid to Beijing? Yes, but
it doesn't go to the government. It goes.
China expert Douglas Paul has served with the State Department, the CIA, and the National Security Council.
It goes for local organizations to try to do some of the things that people in America would like our Congress to support.
Things like fighting the spread of infectious diseases, law enforcement, fighting narcotics, environmental cooperation, and programs in Tibet where some want independence from Beijing. Would saving $10 million help pay down the U.S. budget deficit, now at $15 trillion? Hardly, and Romney admits it.
It's not very much money, but just the idea.
2 years ago, the State Department says the U.S. gave China more than $27 million. Now, State is requesting less than half that, as China transitions from aid recipient to aid donor. Mitt Romney thinks that's a great idea.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to borrow money from the Chinese